we were exploring what would be the capacity or high capacity bus. Secondly, obviously the construction of the North Viking complex, I'm going to call it. I know that Kitsap Transit and in particular Mayor Erickson spent a long time trying to figure out how to get a park and ride developed in the Paulsville area with the Ohava project and a number of other things over the years. And finally, with Mayor Erickson's support, we were able to come to a conclusion, and this is the groundbreaking for the new Viking Center that obviously, as you look at it today, was more than just a park and ride. It's the North Viking Transit Center, as well as their bus facility that we have for bus parking and washing and fueling and things of that nature. She was always there when we needed her to speak on any project. This is obviously part of the groundbreaking for that project in North Kitsap. And then she was there when it was time to cut the ribbon on that project. So Mayor Erickson was obviously quite involved in that, sharing her comments and support during this ribbon cutting event that we held in North Kitsap for that project. So this is a couple more shots of the folks that were there. Council member Stern and a couple of the other council members from the city of Paulsville were there. There was more than just the council. Chairman Forsman attended, as well as we had the FTA administrator, Ms. Linda Gerke was there as well. Next one. And I got to make a little bit of a story, insert something here. During the campaign election of the Fast Ferry program, I know it's no secret that Mayor Erickson was not terribly supportive of that project. And I will say, even though I greatly appreciated her on the selection committee for me taking this position, I will admit that there was one very challenging point in my career in that there was a group of folks that would like to have a person in favor of the ballot issue and a person that was opposed of the ballot issue, and then somebody to provide information. So I had at the time Mayor Patty Lint on my right side, and I had Mayor Erickson on my left side, both for and against both of the board members who I worked for. And I'm stuck in the middle of this discussion in providing facts. And it was a very interesting event. And I will always respect Mayor Erickson for her position in taking that, but she was also very graceful and kind in her comments. And I truly do support that, Mayor, so thank you. Even though she was opposed to the program, once it was approved, she was supportive and has been supportive of the program, and I've always wanted it to be a success. And the previous slide was just an example of Mayor Erickson attending the celebration of the startup of the Kingston Ferry Service in Kingston. So again, thank you for your support, Mayor. Next one, this photograph is a photograph from the groundbreaking at the Silverdale Transit Center. Once again, Mayor Erickson was there supporting the program to help with the groundbreaking. And then the next slide is talking about the all hands meeting, the first and only all hands meeting that we had at Kitsap Transit. And Mayor Erickson was there. She was the chair, I think, at that point. So she was there to help us present awards to our operators. These are two of our operators that achieved 40 years of safe driving and got recognized for that, as well as their jackets to be in that special club. And we still have a handful of operators that once they hit 25 years of safe driving, they're brought into that special club and they get their letterman's jacket, if you will, and special recognition. So Mayor Erickson was there to support us. and as well as the other board members that were there as well for that event, which I still get comments on about how successful that was and when are we going to do it again. So with that, just a few shots of Mayor Erickson through the years that you have been supportive of Kitsap Transit, and we certainly want to take this opportunity to thank you for all of your years of service. And as the normal custom is for Kitsap Transit, I know you're going to be completely surprised here that we too have provided a fare box for you.
Oh,
Fare box includes a plaque that says our sincere thanks to Mayor Rebecca Erickson in recognition and appreciation of the service or her service on the Kitsap Transit Board of Commissioners 2010 to 2045.
thanks.
There's okay, you have a bag that we'll put it in that makes it easier for you to track, so. And there's another thing I forgot to tell you, when you fill it up, call us, we'll come and unlock it for you.
I think you have to, walk the gauntlet here. It's
Tradition.
Okay, without having your kids at French and pair of socks. So-
priorities.
Can I say a few words?
You may.
You know, being on the Kitsap Transit Board has been a real honor. And wow, I've learned a lot. I mean, when you're an elected official and you come into an organization like that, you don't really necessarily know about buses and all the things that it takes to run a bus company, organization. And when I became mayor, it was 2010, and we were all broke. There was no money. We cut Sunday services. We had, we cut to the bone. And it was tough. It was hard. And it took years to kind of build it back up. And I remember, Paul, when we established the policy of kind of hedging for fuel future, for fuel, making sure we had enough money. And those graphs that we did, I remember those decisions early on. And then, when John wanted to become executive director, I remember having lunch over at what was the name of the restaurant right down by the water, and we talked, and I thought, yeah, he's going to be, he with Larry Coppola, remember? And you're going to be great. And you've been a great executive director. You've taken this organization to the next step. I still don't agree with the fast ferries. Okay. Sorry, guys, I don't. I think they're expensive. Okay. So, but the fact remains is, one of the things about being on a board is being able to disagree constructively and move on. And that's what we all have to do when we're on these boards. But I think about where Kitsap Transit was and where it is today. And it is because of these collective boards and the leadership team that you've put together, John. We're only as good as you are. We're only as good as the team you gathered. And so I want to say thank you to all of you for Kitsap Transit, for all the services you've given to Kitsap. It's a big deal. And this is an organization we all should be proud of. And I get to go home pretty soon. And because I'm retiring. So, but thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, but first, I think some of us would like to make some remarks and, Becky, I've thoroughly enjoyed serving with you for quite a few years. And I think if you, and even looking at the pictures, neither one of us had gray hair when we started this. So, and, you've always been passionate about your positions and aren't bashful about sharing them, but always professional. And I greatly respect you for that. And we haven't always agreed, but when we disagree, it's been in a professional manner. And that's what this is about. It's democracy. And you greatly enjoyed serving with you for all of these years, and I wish you the best in yours.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Jay, you raised your hand.
Yes, Mayor Erickson, I'm pretty much been on the outside looking in when we've worked together. And one of the things that Rob told me when I came on this board was that you're representing Kitsap, not Port Orchard. And I will say, having seen you serve on PSRC here and other committees, that you have done an admirable job of making sure that everyone is taken care of and not being just parochial about your city that you represent as mayor. And I thank you for that, because that's huge for everybody. So thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I think maybe we'll do a picture at the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
Versus, get
Just-
to, go ahead.
Just real quick,
Go ahead, Mayor.
no, not every beautiful words, and I don't want my silence to be an indication of a lack of appreciation, because I have really enjoyed working with you, Mayor Erickson. You are, your legacy is strong. We are stronger together. You've always exemplified that, that we work together, and when we're done, we stay united, even though we have differences. And in Kitsap, we need to operate that way. When we head into the regional boards and councils, and we have to speak as with one united voice to have influence, and we have had influence, and leadership on this board's been a part of keeping us united. I've appreciated it. So
Thanks, Greg.
Others? All right. I know Becky has a gathering here next week, and I encourage you, I unfortunately can't make it, but I encourage others to attend and wish her well in retirement. So.
Whoopee.
It's next Wednesday.
It's,
isn't it?
yeah, it's the 17th. It's, I think it's a Paul's City Hall.
It is,
Yeah,
yeah.
2 or something like
In the
that.
afternoon, yes.
Everyone's welcome.
Yep.
They might even feed you. I don't know.
All right, let's back to our agenda here. We got executive director items. What do you have, Mr. Clausen?
The only thing I have is just to remind folks that you have approved the cancellation of the second meeting this month. So this will be the last Kitsap Transit Board of Commissioner meeting for 2025. And I just wanted to also just extend a thank you to all of the board for your support over the past year in all of the different items and issues that we've had to deal with keeping Kitsap Transit moving forward. So thank you for that. And that's it, sir.
We have a number of progress reports. Stand as written, there's nothing to call out. Let's see here, public comment. Is anybody in the public wishing to wish Mayor Erickson well? Or provide other comment? Anybody online? No, no one online, nobody in the audience. I'm gonna close the public. Good of the order. What do we have for good of the order? Go ahead, please.
I had a question on the monthly reports section, and now I have lost it, but I was looking at the chart that was average, looking through it, average monthly or average daily passengers. So here it is, total boarding system wide. I'm looking for it. I'm sorry, I had to go back to make sure I was allowed to speak on it.
That's the average daily boardings.
Average daily boarding system-wide, and then go down to average passengers. So it's page 47 of our packet. Average passengers per hour system-wide. And so is that, so if I'm looking at that, it says 13 passengers per hour on the weekday. Is that per bus or is it total?
It's total for, this one for weekdays is the average for all of the hours that the buses are operating. What was the average number of boardings for each of those hours? So it'd be 13 boardings per hour.
Countywide?
Yes.
For the whole bus system, only 13 people per hour?
Now, that's not necessarily 13 people on the bus at any one time. That's a minimum or an average of at least 13 people stepped on for every hour of service that we have.
Okay, so
I mean, to kind of put that in perspective, 13 is probably appropriate for our size of an agency. There are, just to give you an example, during the commute hours, we'll have a bus operating from, I'll pick on Mayor Erickson, from Paulsbo to the Bainbridge ferry terminal. And when it's going to the ferry terminal in the morning, the bus is full. When it turns around and is heading back to Paulsbo to get ready for the second load, it's generally empty. Now, that particular route will take in excess of an hour, but you have to blend both the trip where it's relatively empty with the trip that's relatively full, and that'll get you your average. Now, if you look at it on an individual route basis, we have routes that are averaging, 50, 60, 70 passengers an hour. We have other routes in areas of the community that we struggle to get an average of 10 passengers. And oftentimes they will be, 8 passengers an hour.
so is
So-
it 13 per route?
13 per hour,
Per route?
not per route,
Per
it's per hour. You take the total.
At any time, at any given time during the day in the county, there's only 13 people on a bus anywhere in the county.
On average, there are 13 people that step on board the bus in an hour, yes.
Midday in my community, it's less than a handful. I mean, but at commute hours, the buses are pretty full. And same way with the ferry, if I go back midday, a few people, but if morning and the afternoon, it's full. So there it's.
Yeah, Commissioner, you bring up a good point. And one of the reasons why I really see agencies like this moving towards microtransit, which is the dial-a-ride model, away from the routed services to more call the ride on demand kind of a model. And I think I think we're headed in that direction. I just think it's a question of implementation. It's also a question, it's going to be a real question about bus sizes, for instance. Because microtransit, you don't need the gilligs that are, right? You need, smaller. So it's going to, I see transit agencies really evolving over the next decade in order to be a lot more flexible, especially in communities like ours. And it's kind of an exciting time to be at transit because of those changes. And I've been reading quite a bit about the microtransit, and I think that that's probably the way we will be in Kitsap County. We'll always have the 90 that goes back and forth between Paulsbo and Bainbridge, because John's right. It's standing room only headed, towards the boat. But if you're trying to service places like Eglon and Hansville and pieces of Seebeck, as Dick Hayes used to say, this is a really hard transit land, right? And so you're going to need that level of flexibility. It's basically dial-a-ride. That's the way it's going to go.
That's partly why, we proposed when we started Sunday service that it's on demand. Because in theory, you're only operating the bus when there's somebody out there to take advantage of it, as opposed to just running back and forth on the street, waiting for somebody to come to you.
Thank you. I feel like I have a Pavlovian response to dial-a-ride. Um, So, dial-a-ride, as you have often said, Director Clausen, is often used to determine if there's a need for routed buses, right? So if you have routed buses that are struggling to find 8 passengers, has any financial analysis been done to determine whether it might not be more cost effective to do dial-a-ride in that area?
Not a financial analysis, but again, we rely a lot on passengers per hour, and we've always strived to have a minimum of 10 passengers per hour for a route to be justified as a route. There are some areas of the community that it falls down into more of a political thing than it is a performance thing. I know you mentioned different areas of the community, but there are routes. And again, I don't necessarily want to pick on Mayor Erickson, but the route that we have in Paulsville that circulates through Paulsville has never really achieved an average of 10 passengers per hour. And we've tried numerous different route structures and scheduling to try to come up with a system that will at least achieve the 10 passenger per hour minimum. But that's the only route the city of Paulsville has. So it's one of those things where we'll keep working with the community to see if we can figure out what is the correct combination of routing and scheduling and things of that nature to try to support it. But if the board would like us to take more of a hard line on a minimum of, historically, we've always strived for 10 passengers an hour for routed buses. And if they don't, then convert it back to something like a dial-a-ride would be an alternative.
Thank you. May I follow up, please? Thanks. I also wanted to thank Mayor Erickson, well, for a million things, but I missed my tip there. But specifically for microtransit, because 10 passengers on an access bus, which that's fine. But 10 passengers on one of those ginormous buses, it isn't making sense. What information would this board need in order to make the call that you're talking about, Director Clausen, to determine if, like, what would a hard line be? What would it look like? What information should we have?
Well, hopefully we'll soon have the information that we can start looking at and dissect it down by route so that you can see exactly whatever number is that you select, what impact that would have on the current level of service. So you could look at that, and we're getting much closer to having those numbers that we can look at it on a per route basis. I could provide you some data now, but it would be data that we've been struggling with over the last period to look at. And the other thing, just for clarification's sake, it's not the minimum number on a bus, it's the minimum number of boardings. So even access, if you look at access for the weekday program, you'll see that it averaged 2.8. That doesn't mean that there was on average 2.8 people on the bus every hour that we operated. No, that meant that just for every hour we had 2.8 boardings, which is in the industry pretty doggone good. Yeah, usually, I mean, most of the agencies and paratransit services are more like about 2. And we've been 2.8 to 3 in our history.
Jay?
Just to echo some of John's comments, when I was at Mason Transit, we were hoping to get 2.5 on our dial-a-ride. We were obviously below that on our routed buses. I mean, we were above 2.5, but the 10 that John had mentioned for boarding, we were trying to get that, and it's a little bit more rural. But please remember that dial ride, that our major, one of our major costs is
Are our mics dead? Yeah, they are. All of them are dead.
So I just wanted to say that it's a much more complex than just the discussion we're having right now. Plus, you also have the issue of if you go from routed to dial ride, not necessarily guaranteeing this, but sometimes you get a loss of ridership because it doesn't quite fit in the hours that you have when you're doing a routed service. So what I'm trying to say in a short note is that this is definitely more complex conversation than what we're getting right now. Well, it's a good question. You know, on the average, it's a much more complex conversation that I think is worth having with the board, but there's a lot of information that we would need. Thank you.
Commissioner Walters?
Maybe it just for a future conversation, be helpful to see, like transit services, so we can see where we, where we fit.
Go ahead, Commissioner Councilman.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and get an opportunity to thank Mayor Erickson for her service, and it's just so disappointing because I only got a year with you on this service, but I've known your service in the mayor as Paulsbo, and you've been a terrific leader there, and a model for a lot of people to follow. So thank you for that service. This is always a problem with transit that I've found is that you need people to ride, but they want reliability and they want so it's a kind of a chicken and egg. You have to ride it for a while and people get used to the schedule, but there won't be a lot of riders for a while because they're not used to the habit of it. So, there's that ramp up of that service, and you just touched on it, but I worked here for about a year in this building as a public information officer and policy analyst for the commissioners. And I rode a Kitsap Transit van pool from Paulsbo. And I get confused because when you say North Viking, I think of that parking lot, that spot right there on Bond as Viking, because there's that, 10-foot tall Viking right there. But that's where we would meet. And it was just a terrific service of all of us as coworkers, and some people came all the way from Port Townsend to ride this bus into work. So that's often not talked about how we're intercepting riders and giving this opportunity. And for some people, if it wasn't for that van, they probably couldn't be an employee because it just would have been too much of a commute for them. So let's keep that in mind too as well, because that's the 10, 12 people I rode with, we were out, cars are parked, they're not using them. So that part is a really great service, I think, of Kitsap Transit.
Go ahead, Councilman.
Sorry, this was the only good of the order thing I actually wanted to bring to. I'm sure all of you have read Director Clausen's memo about using the park and rides as safe parking spaces, and the disapprobation shown by the federal administration for such a thing. I just wanted to confirm that not all of our park and rides are required to comply with federal guidelines. Is that correct? Don't we have park and rides that are ours or belong to the state or other?
I think a lot of our park and ride belongs to nonprofits like churches and things of that nature, but may have been improved though with federal dollars.
Well,
Mr. Clausen.
that's a distinction that we need to make, is that there are park and rides that we develop with federal dollars, which we have to have their permission, whether technically we own them, but they were developed with federal dollars. There are other park and rides as well. There's state-owned park and rides. There are park and rides that are co-op, as Mayor Patanju mentioned, that is owned by a church, and we have an arrangement with the church to be able to utilize a portion of that parking. So it's a mixture of like 3 different kinds. But to give you an example, the McWilliams Park and Ride in East Bremerton is a state-owned park and ride. the gateway parking lot that we have in West Bremerton, there's federal dollars in that. We're about to open up the parking that's around the West Bremerton Bowling Alley. There's federal dollars involved in that. So it's a mixture. There are a number of, like I said, church parking rides out at Crossroads is an example on Fairgrounds Road that is owned by the church. So there's a variety of controlling bodies, shall we say.
So if at any time in the past, like if Franklin Delano Roosevelt had given federal funds to a park and ride, it would still be under federal control,
Yes.
even though the money has been spent.
If there's a federal dollar in it, then it's under federal oversight. And it's even to the point, for example,
Okay.
if we wanted to let one of the park and rides, a coffee vendor come in and set up a coffee stand in a park and ride, we have to get the federal government's approval. And any revenue that is derived from that lease, the feds want to know where it's going to go. And actually, to be honest, the only way it can go is into supporting the operation of Kitsap Transit. So there's a lot of interesting rules that the feds, I'll give you another extreme example. When the federal government came out with the restrictions on our ability to charter buses for community events, even though we have a bus that we paid local dollars for, if it's maintained in a facility that has federal dollars in it, or if it's parked at a facility that has federal dollars in it, we can't use that bus for charters.
Or
So,
if it drives on a road that has federal funds in it. Okay.
I
My
haven't quite
goodness
gone there
gracious,
yet, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Thank you. I had not realized that the restrictions were so very extensive. Thank you.
Well, and I believe we got a ferry boat at an extremely good deal because it was in California, didn't meet their emission requirements anymore. And whoever, if it didn't get transferred to another transit agency, the federal dollars had to be repaid that were invested in the boat. So it enabled us to, because those federal dollars were transferred to us, the federal commitment. We made it really only so another transit agency or ferry operator that was a government agency could take that boat. So it was good for us, but bad for the folks in California that were disposing of the boat. All right. We belabored this enough.
I have one more good-
Go ahead.
I have one more good of the order. First, of course, thank you, Mayor Erickson, for your service. I look forward to celebrating you next week. I just wanted to mention that Sanjay and I have been working with BCAT, and we're going to be interviewing John on Friday for Commissioner's Corner on how our community is preparing for the World Cup next summer, and transit is a huge part of that. So thank you, and look forward to that. We'll pass it on to the board once we have a link to share.
Last call for good of the order. Our meeting is adjourned. Let's gather out front for a photo though. Somebody. Yeah. It's heavy though.